Good morning, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak. Again, I want to acknowledge the great work done by Mary and Louisa and Joe and everyone else in Foyle Women's Aid in organising this, the first Family Justice Conference to be held in Ireland, in the United Kingdom. Some years ago, I accompanied Mary to San Diego to visit the Family Justice Centre in that wonderful city and to attend a conference of hope. And we heard Casey and Gail speak there, among others. And of course, as this conference will, a number of topics were covered. But one of the ones that absolutely opened my eyes was the talk on strangulation. And it's something that maybe 10 or 15 years ago in the courts here, we never really heard of. But there's been an explosion of instances of suffocation, strangulation in this last number of years. It has become the weapon of choice, as it were, for the domestic violence perpetrator. Quite often, external marks aren't left. It's one person's word against another. Someone can be choked to the point of and beyond unconsciousness with very little force or effort applied. And then in future, all the perpetrator has to do is make a symbol, a signal to his victim to absolutely terrify that person. It makes the whole control process so much easier. And yet, I still have solicitors and counsel stand up in my court saying, but how could you have been choked to the point of unconsciousness? There's not a single mark on you. And they actually believe this to be true, even though there's no scientific evidence whatsoever to suggest that there has to be marks. So that, I was as ignorant as they are back then a few years ago until I went to San Diego. And if nothing else, that opened my eyes to something completely unheard of in this jurisdiction. Well, you'll be glad to hear that the judges in this jurisdiction are getting a talk on Thursday. Gail and Casey will be up there, and those of us who don't know about the issues of strangulation will know after Thursday, so hopefully we'll get our eyes opened. This conference is to raise awareness about our Family Justice Centre that we hope to have opened this time, well, in 2020 anyway, maybe this time next year, maybe a bit later. And what we've found in this city, since Mary first approached me shortly after I was appointed here as initially what was called the resident magistrate back in those days and later district judge, was the opportunities for us all in working together on an interagency basis. As I say, Mary approached me quite early on and suggested trying to adopt a collaborative approach, that the courts should not be seeing voluntary agencies, bodies such as Women's Aid, as being something alien or outside the system, that we all had to work together. And over the last almost 20 years here, we've found that that is the only way forward. My experience of the problems of combating domestic violence is that all areas of health, education, justice, and indeed beyond, Department of the Communities, for example, springs to mind. All those government departments, all government agencies, quangos, voluntary organisations, we all have to work together in a collaborative way to tackle the issues of domestic violence from the very outset. And it's something, I think, particularly in the field of education, where we have to teach our young children, as soon as they're capable of understanding the issues, that they have to have respect for each other, that there should be no inequality between the two genders, or more. There's more than two now. Forgive me for being old-fashioned. It's an age thing. But I note, for example, my 4-year-old grandson goes to rugby tots it was to help socialise him and get him into sport. He did go to Gaelic training, but they insisted on playing loud disco music and he wouldn't stay. But my experience there was of rugby tots, but at that age, boys and girls learn together. They play together and they train together. And I can see among those young kids respect for each other. And there's no such thing as, the boys are better than girls, because quite simply, some of the girls would run over the top of you. So my grandson has realised that, no, there's none of that nonsense. That is where we need to get in. We need to get in with the 4 and 5-year-olds in subtle ways like that. Not introducing them to ideas about violence or anything like that, but introducing ideas of respect and dignity and self-discipline and self-worth. And if we can teach that, we may be able to break the cycle. And it's again a new way of working. As I've said already, I learned from the US experience in one particular way in relation to one particular topic. But we can learn from the US experience in relation to how family justice centres can fit into a more modern, up-to-date society and provide one safe place, a refuge for people who want to get out of abusive relationships. And I hope that the delegates here will learn how we propose to provide an escape route for people in abusive relationships through the Family Justice Centre, which will show a way out that bypasses all the bureaucratic nonsense that victims have to go through, spending days and days, if not weeks, going around different government agencies, different bodies, trying to get benefits sorted out, trying to get schools sorted out, housing, all the things, all the obstacles put in the path of the victim trying to escape, to the point where a lot of them just say, you know what, it's not worth it. But when we get the Family Justice Centre up and running, all this will be done, most of it within the space of a morning. And people will see that there is a way out if they choose to take it. So that, combined with new approaches in the courts, problem-solving approaches, is part of an overall collaborative plan to attack domestic violence at its roots. Because I can see, I've been in this city over 17 years as a judge. I've been full-time for over 20 years. Throughout all that time, I have seen where people who were exposed to domestic violence now have children. Those children can be exposed to domestic violence. And the reason I'm seeing them is they're committing offences and they're in front of me. And it's a common factor in about 80+% of the cases I have, that the perpetrator of that particular offence, and it may be very simple shoplifting offences, or it could be very serious offences of violence. But those people have been exposed to domestic abuse at an early age, and it warps them emotionally and psychologically. So it is very, very important that we win the battle. And it's very, very important that we work together to achieve that. So I urge you all to attend as many events as you can over the next couple of days and take that learning away with you into your own fields and endeavour to do your bit to combat the evil that is an evil, that is domestic violence. So I'm afraid I now have to go away for a couple of hours and do the day job, and I'll be back this afternoon. Thank you.